Hey everyone, and welcome to Tony for Missed Opportunities. Tony for you. This channel has done many deep dives discussing the angels and demons of the Shin Megami Tensei series, drawing inspiration from the many religions and folktales told across the globe, from ancient times to modern. Despite the amazing amount of explored demons, there are still some that have yet to make an appearance, so I put together a few I wish I could see in the games to come. This video will mark part 2 of my demons I wish were in Shin Megami Tensei, and will serve as a rapid-fire lore video on mythical figures, creatures, and historical legends I think are just fascinating. To make the list, the demon must not be in a mainline or well-known spin-off game. That means if it's a demon exclusive to Rond, Demikids, or Last Bible, it doesn't count. Without any further ado, let's get into the list. And stay tuned for a special guest too. This video was made possible by the great people over at my Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. Also, I have a Discord, so if you want to come chat with me and other wannabe theologists, come join and hang out. First up is King Solomon, the wisest king in history. King Solomon, also sometimes known as Jedediah, was the son of the previous king of Israel, David. Yes, that David, the one who killed Goliath. Solomon is one of the most interesting figures in all of Judeo-Christian canon, but one not many people really know about. There are 3 books dedicated to Solomon in the Bible: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Songs, each telling the story of King Solomon from his early days as king to his downfall as a ruler. Solomon's life started in a unique way as the second child of David from his adulterous relationship with a woman named Bathsheba, his second wife. David lusted after the woman, who was already married to a citizen of the land. He purposely sent Bathsheba's husband to war in hopes of getting him killed, all so he could marry his wife. When the man inevitably died from being sent on a suicide mission, Solomon and Bathsheba married and conceived a child together. Enraged at the once sacred David's actions, God smote down their first child, forcing him to face up to God. The ruler swore to bring into the world a second child as a peace offering between the king of Israel and God. Therefore, Solomon was born, whose name means peace. After the rule of David, there was a power grab to see who would be the next king, and while there were many others older and wiser who had claim to the throne, it was Bathsheba and close friend Nathan the prophet who convinced David to name Solomon his successor, even though he was only about 15 years old. During his reign, Solomon was known for his immense wisdom and understanding for all matters of rule, from policy to adjudication of law. But this was not from his strength of will alone. When he was young, Solomon sacrificed to God and was visited by him in a dream. God asked what the young king required of him. So Solomon asked God for one thing: the wisdom to better rule and guide his people to a good and holy life in the eyes of the Lord. God was proud of the young man for asking such a selfless request, not for the self-serving rewards like riches or more power, but a request for his people and the hope for a better future. God personally answered his request by granting him knowledge and foresight surpassing the greatest minds in all of the world. Over his roughly 40-year reign, he expanded his kingdom in military strength as well as founding numerous colonies for trade with other regions. Perhaps the most infamous tale of his wisdom in legal matters was the Judgment of Solomon. One day, 2 women came to Solomon, each claiming to be the mother of a child. There was no way to tell for sure which one was telling the truth, so Solomon commanded the baby to be cut in half and shared between the 2 women, fair and equal. Upon hearing this proclamation, one woman instantly renounced her claim to the child, saying that she would rather see the baby in the hands of another than to have any harm done to them. The other woman did not contest the king's ruling. Solomon saw this and knew as clear as day who the mother really was. The woman who gave her claim to the child just to see it safe was given the baby immediately. Now, to get into more occult interpretations, some believe that King Solomon had in his possession numerous magical artifacts as well as command over at least 72 demons which were trapped in a brass vessel. As stated in the Lesser Key of Solomon, or Ars Goetia, a Christian grimoire documenting the demons summoned and used by the wise king to expand his rule. With the help of Solomon's ring and many other magical items, Solomon summoned demons to grant him nigh-on invulnerability, knowledge on all subjects, and even superpowers like invisibility. Many of these demons are well known in their own right, all being rulers of hell in some way. Demons like Asmodeus, Belial, Astaroth, and Decarabia, all demons summoned and utilized by the good King Solomon during his time as ruler. The Ars Goetia itself deserves a video on its own, which I plan to do in the future. Solomon's reign ended after about 40 years, dying at age 60, and is widely known as the last ruler of the United Kingdom of Israel. With the rulers coming after him being refused by the people, it ultimately resulted in the fall of the First Temple period. In Shin Megami Tensei, Solomon would make for a great don't judge a book by its cover demon. What might look like a simple old man at first glance would have intensely high stats due to gaining the power of dozens of demons and harbor superhuman ability both physically and mentally. His race could possibly be Herald or even something more unique to humans like the Summoner race, despite being a demon. Despite many of the demons mentioned in his grimoire being a part of the series, Solomon himself not being a part of any of the games needs to be rectified soon. Next is a pick that has been requested and mentioned to me on many different occasions, but I never really gave it much thought up until now. Creepypastas and SCPs. For those of you that don't know, creepypastas and SCPs are essentially scary stories people write and share with each other over the internet. Creepypastas are stories that encompass all things horror, while SCPs have a shared universe that mainly focus on individual monsters. On the surface, that sounds completely ridiculous to add simple scary internet stories as demons in Shin Megami Tensei, which is home to demons like Lucifer, the Archangels, Shiva and Vishnu, and many more incredibly important figures in theology. It sounded crazy on the surface to me too, but this series is also home to demons like Jack Frost, the Spirit of Winter, who is the poster child of the series. Even more recently, there are demons like Turbo Granny, which is a modern Japanese urban legend where if you're speeding on the highway late at night, an old woman will knock on your window while you're driving, causing you to get into a car accident. A more Western pop culture demon added is the Chupacabra, which was a demon I previously covered. Residing in Puerto Rico, this beast was known to suck the blood of hundreds of goats, terrorizing the countryside for a handful of years. To solidify the crazy urban legends added to Shin Megami Tensei, perhaps there is no better example than Chemtrail. A demon based on the idea that the trails left behind airplanes as a result of the hot exhaust being expelled at high altitudes is actually a harmful chemical rained down on the citizens of a country by the government to control the population. Urban legends have a certain intrigue around them as many people at some point believed they were true, and some still do. But in many cases of urban legends and ghost stories, the tales were always meant to simply entertain. Very similar in fact to scary tales and urban legends meant to entertain brought to the modern era, now called creepypastas. It's a natural progression. Many are, in fact, incredibly well-written pieces of media, and I found myself on many occasions late at night reading through some of the SCP Foundation's most famous entries, imagining what a creature like that would do if brought to life. Stories like SCP-173, or The Sculpture. This is a human-shaped rock covered in blood and filth which remains motionless as long as at least one individual is looking at it directly. As soon as line of sight is broken by all personnel, even for the blink of an eye, the statue will move at unparalleled speed and instantly break the neck of any living being close to it, killing it instantly. Okay, maybe that would be a little overpowered. But another worthy addition is of course the now world-famous Slender Man. Many believe there is a being that stalks and kidnaps children with a horrifying visage. The Slender Man gets his name from his disturbingly long and skinny limbs stretching out inhumanly far from his body. The man wears a suit, but other than his vaguely humanoid appearance, he has absolutely no other human characteristics, with a head looking more like a smooth white mold than anything resembling a man. This creepypasta in particular became immensely popular, spawning movies, games, and even inspiring a mob in Minecraft. The lack of a definitive story or explanation of the character made him the perfect icon to make your own horror. That was just two examples, but many of these stories would fit right in as demons in Shin Megami Tensei, and it's about time they flesh out the rumored demons a bit more. With how popular these stories have become in recent years, it's about time we get some more modern urban legends.
One subsection of modern folklore I'm especially a big fan of are 20th century American cryptids and urban legends. I think there's a vast array of interesting figures that could be turned into unique demons for the SMT series. And one of my personal favorites is a little guy known as the Flatwoods Monster. The Flatwoods Monster traces his origin back to Flatwoods, West Virginia in 1952. On the night of September 12th, the trio of Edward May, Fred May, and Tommy Heyer, who all range from 10 to 13 years old, spotted a flashing object fall from the sky and crash onto a neighboring farm. When the May brothers told their mom Kathleen about what happened, she enlisted the help of Eugene Lamont, a National Guardsman, to check out the situation. Also accompanying them were two other local children and the family dog. It was basically an entire RPG party going to see whatever this thing was. The group made the trek to the farm through the woods and spotted a peculiar red light on top of a hill. Lamont pointed his flashlight at it and revealed a horrifying sight. A roughly 10-foot tall entity with a spade-shaped head, claws at the end of its arms, glowing eyes, and a metallic body. The creature loomed over them and began to make a hissing sound, as it began floating towards the group, leading Lamont to scream, drop his flashlight, and take off with the rest of the crew. They also reported there being a pungent mist in the area which left them feeling nauseated. The adults informed the police about what had happened, and when they went to investigate, they reported that nothing unusual was at the scene. The story ended up becoming a bit of a media sensation for a while, making appearances in newspapers and on radio shows throughout the country. Despite his newfound popularity, sightings of the monster remained scarce. There's a few other accounts from around the same time period, but many of them were likely just piggybacking off the original sighting. One interesting account from a couple of years later describes an encounter with a remarkably similar creature, who had a metallic body, but instead of the spade-shaped head, he had a reptilian face. Absolutely terrifying. So what exactly was the Flatwoods Monster? He was an alien robot hybrid who crash-landed onto Earth, with the sole mission of dominating all life on the planet. End of discussion. I guess if you want to be boring about it, the most likely answer is that he was just a misidentified barn owl. It's pretty likely the group simply encountered an owl perched on a tree or swooping down at them, and in the heat of the moment while surrounded by darkness, mistook it for a humanoid. It having claws especially lines up with this idea. So that's probably what actually happened. When you make your way towards what you expect is a crash-landed UFO in the middle of the night, your anxious mind tends to play a couple of tricks on you. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that a scary owl was mistaken for this thing. Either way, the monster has become an iconic part of UFO folklore, and resulted in quite the boon for tourism in West Virginia. There's a yearly festival, a Flatwoods Monster Museum which opened in 2018, and a series of big chairs erected in his honor. Yo, what if we kissed on the Flatwoods Monster chairs? Beyond just his point of origin though, he's made various appearances in media. For example, he's featured in Fallout 76 as an enemy, he shows up in the game Tomodachi Life alongside Mothman, and he most likely inspired the design for the creatures that invade Romani Ranch in Majora's Mask. Flatwoods Monster would work really well as an SMT demon, and it'd be a great excuse to bring back the UMA race. This is a classification of demons based on cryptids such as the Chupacabra, which sadly hasn't been used in the series since Strange Journey. Since the witnesses reported a pungent mist surrounding him, I imagine he'd specialize in using status-inflicting spells like Poison Breath and utilizing wind magic. His hard metallic exterior would make him resistant to physical, but weak to electric since his machinery would get fried by lightning. And I think a cool little Easter egg would be to make him a special fusion requiring a Mothman. Mothman happens to be another West Virginia cryptid, so they might be cousins or something. Atlas, please put my friend the Flatwoods Monster into a game. He is currently unemployed and looking for work.
Last up, I chose Ereshkigal, Mesopotamian goddess of the underworld. From the Sumerians to the Akkadians to the Babylonians, this goddess was ubiquitous in the region. What makes Ereshkigal unique is that unlike other rulers of the underworld who were feared and written off as tyrants or cruel punishers, Ereshkigal was revered and played a very important role to the people at the time. Ereshkigal was the sister of Inanna, goddess of beauty, sex, and law, both divine and political. In contrast, Ereshkigal was the goddess of the underworld and supreme judge of mortal deeds on earth, where the individual's soul would either be granted passage to the greater realm or be torn apart by her demons. Her role was feared and respected by all, including the other gods of the pantheon, for not even the highest of deities dared to travel to her realm. Ereshkigal's main task, aside from judging mortal souls, was to prevent passage between the mortal realm and the spiritual realm. She prevented mortals from uncovering too much of the afterlife, for learning too much of the other planes would prevent them from living a full life. Her realm was described as a great dark place beneath the mountains, where souls of the damned were forced to wander and eat nothing but mud and dust. One of the most important stories regarding Ereshkigal was the poem Inanna's Descent into the Underworld. Prior to this story, Ereshkigal was married to the god Gugulana, who was sent by Inanna to kill Gilgamesh after the god king rejected Inanna's advances. This unfortunately resulted in the death of Gugulana, and Ereshkigal was absolutely furious. Inanna went to the underworld to attend the funeral of Ereshkigal's late husband, and hearing this, the underworld goddess took it as a great slight against her, and tasked an attendant of all 7 gates of hell to strip one item of clothing from Inanna as she passed through the realm. After Inanna finally reached her destination, she was naked and vulnerable. The court of the underworld judged Inanna guilty of a great sin. Upon hearing the verdict, Ereshkigal kills her sister and displays her corpse as a message to the other gods that her role is the judge of sins above all. You will be judged, whether you are family, friend, or even lover. Inanna planned ahead though and beseeched the other gods that if anything were to happen to her in the underworld, to resurrect her in the Garden of Heaven. When Ereshkigal learned of this, however, if the gods thought she was mad before, they haven't seen anything yet. The goddess marched to the gates of heaven and demanded that if Inanna is not returned, at least another soul is given on her behalf. If not, she would bring about a demonic invasion the likes of which no mortal would survive and no god could prevent. The other gods recognized her power and were absolutely not going to call her bluff, so they were willing to give Inanna back and have her just live out her sentence in the underworld. Inanna eventually found her husband, Dumuzid, who was partying and cheating with other women, and gave him up instead of her. Now, getting wild and cheating on your wife is awful, don't get me wrong, but Inanna most likely just used this as an excuse to have someone else be punished for her crime. Let's not forget she wanted to marry Gilgamesh after all. Inanna sent a man to live eternally in hell to protect herself. And seeing that Inanna's husband was sacrificed, just as Ereshkigal's husband was sacrificed, she was content and went back to her realm. But Ereshkigal isn't all doom, judgment, and punishment. Later, it's revealed that Ereshkigal may have a soft side, as in the Return of Dumuzid, Ereshkigal allows Inanna's husband to return to her for 6 months out of the year after his sister, Geshtinanna, gives herself up as a substitute for his sentence. This story proves that Inanna truly did love her husband, and that the decision to sacrifice him was not done so easily. Ereshkigal certainly knew this, which is why she eventually allowed Dumuzid to return back to his wife for at least half of the year. Ereshkigal's role in ancient times was certainly deserving of fear and respect, but in no story does she ever seem unfair or cruel. The judge of souls is even portrayed as somewhat compassionate to those who seek forgiveness, and has had lovers she remained faithful to until death, like Gugulana and eventually Nergal. Every story regarding her has other gods not daring to set foot in her realm, as even in the Descent of Inanna story, when the gods were tasked with retrieving Inanna's body, they sent 2 flies in their place. The bugs subdued Ereshkigal as commanded, but even they could not bring themselves to do harm to the underworld goddess and released her from their bindings, empathizing with her plight. Upon which Ereshkigal gave the body willingly to them as a show of respect for the ones forced to do the god's bidding. Ereshkigal is a good person forced to do a job not many people would be willing to take, but all those who interact with her cannot help but respect and appreciate her ability and personality. A true seeker of justice and a god worthy of praise above many others. In Shin Megami Tensei, there's already Inanna and even Ereshkigal's husband Nergal, so it only makes sense that Ereshkigal herself makes it in. The beautiful goddess of the dead on the surface could be a tyrant or a vile race, but that wouldn't really fit, seeing as she is quite the just ruler. The femme, lady, or even reaper race would match her well, and she would fit right in as a counterpart to the goddesses of fertility and life. Well, that covers another batch of demons I wish were in SMT. In researching this, I was shocked by the tons of Ars Goetia demons coming from a book attributed to Solomon were in the game, and yet he was nowhere to be found. Just goes to show they'll never run out of cool demons to add to the series. Special thanks to Andre Vinicius da Silva Valens, Anton, Kalos, Frankie Stoned, Goose Kebab, Jim Taylor, Just a Middleman, Matt M, Patty123, Stuart Ash, The Digital Dutchman, The Toaster Messiah, Video Gamer 75, and many more for supporting the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. Thanks for watching this Demon Wishlist Roundup, and I'll see you in the next Tony for You. Have a good one.